back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video. Welcome to my very late July wrap-up. This is taking me so long to film, and I don't really know why. I've just been really busy. I got sick. I have been really struggling with balancing my work and filming life and schedule. So this is coming to you very late. I hope you guys are still interested in seeing what I read in July. If not, no worries. Hopefully next month will be better. But without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about all the books that I read in the month of July. So let's go over the stats really quick. In the month of July, I read a total of 12 books. Out of those 12 books, I had 2 5 stars, 5 4 stars, 3 3 stars, 0 2 stars, 1 1 star, and 1 DNF. For the genre breakdown, I read 3 thrillers, 1 sci-fi, 2 historical fictions, 2 fantasy, 1 nonfiction, 1 graphic novel, 1 magical realism, and 1 contemporary. Overall, it was a total of 3,619 pages, and that equals out to about 116 pages a day. 6 out of the 12 books that I read were YA, and 6 out of the 12 books that I read were adult. 3 of the books that I read had queer representation, and 2 of the books that I read had people of color representation. Out of the books that I did read, 2 of them were strictly audiobooks, and the other 10 were physical books. And 10 of the books that I read were owned. 1 was from the library and 1 I borrowed from Script. So that was the full stats breakdown. I added a few more stats in than I usually do for my monthly breakdowns. If you guys like the stats that I included today, feel free to let me know. If you didn't like it, also let me know. And if there's some other things that you want me to add in there that you guys are interested in knowing about my monthly reading stats, please feel free to let me know all the time. I love constructive criticism. I want to do what's best for you guys. Also, you can kind of see my shirt. I just want to do a quick little snapshot of my shirt because it's so cute. If you guys love Avatar: The Last Airbender, you guys know this shirt is adorable, and I thought I would show it off. So let's go ahead and actually talk about the books. So I'm going to start with the first book. On not such a great note, I'm going to start with my DNF, and that was All the Light We Cannot See. This is by Anthony Doerr. I was buddy reading with this with one of my subscribers, and unfortunately this book just wasn't for me. I ended up not rating it. I got about 100 pages in, and the book it wasn't my type of book. The writing was very slow and dense, and the story didn't really go anywhere in the first 100 pages, and I just was so extremely bored. I was listening to the audiobook with this, and I was still having a really hard time pushing through. The person that narrated this so extremely slow, and it was too hard for me to work my way through it. So unfortunately I DNF'd it. Nothing against the book itself. I think that the topic of the book itself is very intriguing, and I would eventually love to read a World War II story at some point in my life, but this just wasn't it for me. Okay, the next book is the first book that I read out of my These Books Will Self-Destruct in 12 Months video, and that is Recursion by Blake Crouch. I was reading this in the month of June, but I didn't end up finishing it at the end of June, so I just brought it into July, and I ended up giving this book a 3 star. If you guys don't know what Recursion is about, this is a book about this main character who is a detective, and one day he ends up getting a call for a woman that is about to commit suicide. She's gonna jump off a building, and the reason that she got to this place is because she has what the book calls false memory syndrome, and it's basically where you wake up and suddenly have these memories of a life that you don't necessarily remember living. So you now have 2 versions of a life in your brain, and you can't figure out which one is real and which one is fake. And so she ends up committing suicide, and this detective is now hell-bent on trying to figure out what false memory syndrome is. And it just follows that timeline. It spans over multiple years. This book is very interesting. It very much reminded me of Inception. I think as the first sci-fi that I've ever read, I was definitely blown away by it because I wasn't overly confused by the writing itself. I feel like Blake Crouch really makes it super accessible in regards to his reading and the writing style that he did this in. And because it did remind me of my favorite movie of all time, I very much enjoyed it. However, the ending of this book really brought the stars down for me. I really wanted more from the ending, and I didn't get it. So unfortunately, I ended up giving it a 3 star. This is actually a book that I will be unhauling, and it's not because I didn't like it. It's just that it's not a book that I think that I will ever reread again, and I really think that somebody else could really enjoy this. All right, and then we had a book that unfortunately didn't exactly meet my expectations. This book was on my, I believe it was on my 5-star predictions. I could be wrong about that. But this was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Don't get me wrong, when I say it didn't meet my expectations, I did not hate it. I actually very much enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4-star. I think that the story itself was very enthralling, and I continue to want to listen to these people and their lives. It's just, after so much hype on BookTube and everybody loving this book, it just wasn't as amazing as I thought that everyone else thinks it is. I don't know. If you guys don't, by somehow, some chance, don't know what Daisy Jones is about, this is a book set in the 70s, I think, about a band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and it basically is told in interview format about the way that the band came together and eventually their demise and how they fell apart. And I think that the way that this book was told was so fun. Being told in interview style just really added a certain type of character to this book that not a lot of books have, and it did have a certain charm that I really fell in love with. The audiobook of this book was fantastic. It is a full cast. It is a fantastic audiobook, and all the way up until the very end I was very intrigued, and I really love the little reveal at the end of this book. I felt like it really tied everything together and made the book have a little bit more purpose, and for that I'm really excited. I heard there's a TV show or a movie coming out, and I would definitely watch it. It was a great book all in all, and I would definitely recommend it if you're looking to read some more of a beloved BookTube book. All right, and I believe this book that I'm about to talk about is my first book that I've ever rated a 1-star that I didn't DNF, and that was Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. This book is the strangest book that I have ever read, and it just made no sense. It was entirely like pointless. This book was pointless. I don't even really know how to explain this book to you. I'm just going to read the back, and it says 7-year-old Gwen and her parents, Eric and Andrew, are vacationing at a remote cabin in New Hampshire, a handful of miles from the Canadian border, far removed from the bustle of city life. Cut off from the urgent hum of cell phones and from internet, they are 2 miles away from their closest neighbors. On a summer day, Gwen catches grasshoppers in the front yard. A stranger unexpectedly appears. Leonard is the largest man Gwen has ever seen, but he is so young and friendly. With the warm smile that wins her over almost instantly, Leonard and Gwen continue to talk and play, until 3 more strangers come down the road carrying strange, menacing objects. In a panic, Gwen tells Leonard that she must go back inside the cabin. But before she goes, her new friend tells her, "None of what's going to happen is your fault. You haven't done anything wrong. But the 3 of you will still have to make some tough decisions. I wish with all my broken heart you didn't have to." And when Gwen sprints away to warn her parents, Leonard calls out, "Your dads won't want to let us in, Gwen, but they have to. We need your help to save the world, please." This book literally gives you nothing from the synopsis, and that's literally how I felt reading this book. I'm like, what the hell am I reading? It was a very strange book. I'm not going to tell any more about this because it's just not worth it. Overall, I would never recommend this to somebody, like never. It was a horrible thriller. The ending made this book so infuriating because you went through this entire book wondering why and how and what is happening, and you get 0 answers by the end of this book. And I just felt, I like an open-ended book, don't get me wrong, but this was just, it was just not necessary. I don't recommend it. I'm gonna put this down now. Okay, but let's talk about something on the total opposite end of the spectrum. One of my 5-star reads of the of the month, and that was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. As you guys know, Sarah J. Maas has quickly become one of my new favorite authors. I adore her work. She has this way of writing that just pulls you into every character that she writes, and you're just enthralled by the stories, and I have a hair on my lip. And the people, and you just want the best for every single character that she writes, and I love that about what Sarah J. Maas can do. This book was fantastic. It was no different from my love every other one of her books in the series that she writes. If you guys don't know what this is about, this book is about Feyre. She is living in a world where fairies exist, and basically she is hunting out for her family, getting food for her family because they are very, very poor. And if she doesn't hunt for them, they will basically starve. And so she's out one day and she sees a wolf and she kills it. And this Fae king basically comes and retrieves her from her home because she is now being punished for killing another fairy. And she gets taken to this new world, this fairyland, and she's basically his prisoner. But she knows that the best thing for her family is to stay where she's at and to live this new life in the fairy world. And it is definitely a romance. If you know Sarah J. Maas, you know that she loves the angst and the romance in her books. And overall, I think I explained this really poorly, but the book was fantastic. There was a lot of political intrigue and a lot of steamy angst in this book that just made me fall in love with every single one of these characters, and I cannot wait to continue on with the series. All right, another book that I love for so many different reasons, and that is So You Want to Talk About Race. This was a fantastic nonfiction book about anti-racism. It is by a Black queer author, and just getting some more perspective on the world that we live in was so incredible. If you are looking for an easily digestible, very up-to-date and accurate portrayal of what it's like to be a Black person in the times that we live in, this book is fantastic for that. It talks about some really incredible topics such as, of course, racism, microaggressions, intersexuality, just incredible deep topics that people really need to be listening to. It really brushes up on the topic of how to respond when you have been affected by racism, as well as how to respond when somebody is perceiving something that you do or say as racist, and the ways that you can be a better ally to the people around you. This book is fantastic. It's one of the best nonfiction books that I have read, and this book made me cry. This book made me nod in agreement so many times, thinking, wow, this has happened to me, or wow, I know people that this has happened to. And it's so crazy how true and real this book was for me. Definitely a book that I'll be rereading in the future. 100% recommend it if you're looking for more anti-racism books. This one was incredible. And if it wasn't very clear, I gave that book a 5-star. All right, and then I read a graphic novel, which was Archie Volume 1. This is by Mark Waid, Annie Wu, Veronica Fish, and Fiona Staples. This graphic novel was just okay. I didn't really enjoy it. I gave it a 3-star. I think that the art style was really awesome, and I think that the fact that it was about Riverdale is really cool, but it just wasn't for me. I do have the second copy of, I have another copy of this on my shelves. It's Volume 2, and I will read it, but I will not be keeping this series on my shelves. It's just not something that I could ever see myself rereading. It was a nice, quick read, and it was a little bit of a fun time, but overall, the storyline just wasn't for me. I felt like it was just a little bit too dull. I don't really know how else to explain it. The art style in here is very pretty though. If you were looking to get more of a Riverdale fix, then I would recommend it, but this just wasn't for me. All right, and then this next book I had a lot of high hopes for. This book was definitely in my 5-star predictions, and unfortunately, it just didn't quite make it. And that was The Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell. If you guys know and have been following my channel for a while, you know that The Last Magician is one of my favorite books of all time, and I really, really thought that I was going to give this book a 5-star as well. But I think that this book just fell a little bit short for me. I think that it suffered a little bit from second book syndrome. It felt like more of a filler book than anything else. This book had so much potential because you just have so much that the characters are striving and working towards, but I honestly felt like nothing really happened. The characters didn't go through that much. There wasn't a lot of turmoil. There wasn't a lot of angst like there was in the first book. And at the very end, it didn't leave me with that gut-wrenching feeling of I need to pick up the third book right away. Don't get me wrong, I will definitely continue on with the series, and I have a lot of hope for where the series is going. This book just wasn't everything that I wanted it to be. I didn't really explain what the synopsis is. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you what the second book is about because spoilers, but the first book, The Last Magician, is about this girl named Esta who has the ability to stop and move time. And with the addition to a stone element that she has, she can time travel. So she gets sent in the past by her mentor to steal a book from the people that are going to steal it from the Order, basically. And the intention of bringing this book back to him is so that they can bring down the Brink. And this Brink is this magical barrier around a certain part of New York that keeps these magical beings inside the city. And if they try to pass through the Brink, they either die or get stripped of their magic and they're never the same again. This book, the first book, had a lot of twisted, incredible intrigue, and it had just so much fun to it. And not to say this book didn't have the same. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4-star. Overall, it was a fantastic book. It just fell a little flat for me, but overall, extremely recommend the series if you are looking for more of a fun, lighthearted fantasy. This is definitely it, although they're chunky, so there you go. All right, the rest of the books that I'm going to talk about today are all 4 stars, all really good books, just weren't quite the 5-star that I wanted them to be. And this book that I'm about to talk about, I was very surprised about, and that is The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. If you guys don't know what this is about, this is a historical fiction, I wouldn't say gender bent because it follows somebody that was really in the world, but it's magical realism, and this follows Mozart's sister, Nazarel Mozart, and it just follows basically her story with really struggling to grasp the fact that as a woman in the time period that they live in, she wants to be a composer, but that is not the way that their lifestyle works. For women, they are supposed to grow up to a certain age and be ready to marry and have children, and composing is just not for women at this time. And so she's really struggling with that because Mozart is this world-renowned, really incredibly gifted child that can compose just as good, if not better than her, and she's really struggling with that. So as they travel throughout the countries performing for all of these people, her and her brother make up this magical world called the Kingdom of Back. But the Kingdom of Back becomes very real and prevalent in their lives, and it's just their story and this magical, chaotic mess. And the first couple 100 pages, well, the first 200 pages of the book are kind of interesting because you don't really know where the book is going, but it has a lot of potential, and when you get to the end, everything kind of falls together, and it's just so much fun to read. I would definitely reread this book again because I feel like I missed a lot of the little things in this book that I feel like a lot of other people might have picked up on, and I know that this book has a lot of symbolism and metaphors in it, but I'm just feeling a little bit lost in what those metaphors are and what they represent. So I feel like this definitely needs a reread at some point, but I'll get there eventually. All right, and then another book that I was thoroughly surprised by was The Other People by C.J. Tudor. I know that a lot of people said that they really didn't enjoy this book, but I personally really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a very interesting thriller. This thriller follows a man who is coming home from work to go home to his daughter and his wife, but as he's on his way home, stuck in traffic, he sees a little girl in the back of a car that looks strangely like his daughter. And as the car is pulling away, the little girl in the back whispers, "Daddy." And he chases after this car and eventually loses him. And he goes to call his wife, and the police answer and tell them that his wife and his daughter are dead. And so he is hellbent and determined to know what happened to his daughter because he really doesn't believe that she died because he physically saw her in the back of that car. And so it's just following his story of trying to figure out what happened, who was responsible, and the other people are very prevalent in this story. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys if you do want to read this, but I thought it was very enjoyable. I think that the aspect of some of the more interesting things that happened in this book didn't quite click for me, and there wasn't really an answer to them. I don't want to say them because it's obviously a spoiler, but I just didn't really quite see the reasoning for them and the understanding behind it. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. I would definitely recommend this to people. I'm kind of on the fence of whether or not I want to keep it because with thrillers, do you ever really read them again? So, well, for me at least. I know some people do, but I don't know if I will. I don't know yet. Okay, and the very last book that I'm going to talk about is something that I'm very excited to talk about because this is the first book that I finally read that's in verse that I thoroughly enjoyed, and that was Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Now, when I first started reading this book about at the 100-page mark, I was really questioning whether or not I was going to like this because it's a very slow build up into the big crescendo at the very end where things kind of come together and everything makes sense. But up until then, I was kind of bored, I'm not gonna lie. However, with that being said, this book is beautiful. It's beautifully written. The amount of representation and tough topics talked about in this book in the short amount of words that are in this book as a whole was fantastic. If you guys don't know what this is about 2 girls who find out about each other after their dad dies in a plane crash, and they find out that he was living double lives. Basically, he had a daughter and a wife in New York named Yahira. I believe that's right. Yes, Yahira. And then another family in the Dominican Republic. His daughter was named Camino, and her mother had passed away a while ago. But he was living this double life where he would travel for half of the year and live with Camino in the Dominican Republic, and then travel back and live the other half of the year with Yahira and his wife. And you just really see these sisterly bonds in this book, even though they don't know each other and they don't have the type of relationship that most sisters would have. But they also talk a lot about race and coming to learn who you are when a loved one has passed on and figuring out how to cope with that. There are also trigger warnings for attempted sexual assault, and it's a fantastic book. Also, one of the sisters in this book is lesbian, and so that is talked about very well in this book as well. And I think that overall it was a fantastic book with fantastic representation, and I just really enjoyed the book as a whole. For the book being in prose, I thought that it was a fantastic book that packed a lot of punch towards the very end and made the whole book come together for me. So I gave it a 4-star. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's work. Okay, and the last book that I actually read in the month of July was Redemption Prep. I don't really remember who this is by, but this is what they said on the synopsis was Twin Peaks meets Riverdale. And I picked this up for my Scribd recommendation pick for bingo, and this book was interesting. I ended up giving it a 3-star in the very end, but it's basically about this school for gifted students, and not gifted in the sense of like supernatural abilities, but more like just like cognitive, intelligent abilities. And so these are really smart students that go to this really secluded school in the middle of nowhere, and one of the really popular girls from the school ends up going missing, and it's basically about the story of the people that go to that school trying to find her. And it's a very interesting perspective, and the way that it's told is very interesting. And most of the book, I was sitting there listening like, why am I reading this? What is going on? But as the story evolved, as the story evolved, I continued to want to know more about the reason why things were happening the way that they were happening. And so I wouldn't say that I loved the book, but I was intrigued enough to finish it, and I ended up giving it a 3-star. It wasn't a bad book. It just wasn't something that I would go around recommending to people, but I read it. So there you go. All right, here are all of the books that I was able to read in the month of July. For it being my birthday month and being very busy during that time, I'm very happy with the amount of reading that I was able to get done. I didn't complete all of the books on my bingo for July. However, I had a lot of fun reading all of these books, and I was thoroughly surprised by a lot of these, and a lot of them I ended up giving some really high ratings. I had to put those books down before my arm fell off, but that is the end of this video. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know that it's coming to you guys a bit later than usual, but overall, I hope that you still had fun hearing about these books and hearing my thoughts. I know that you guys comment a lot in my videos saying how excited you are to hear my thoughts at the end of the month. So even though this is coming late, I did still want to bring it to you guys, and thank you guys so much for your love and support constantly. This past couple of months have been very hard for me adjusting, and you guys have been there every step of the way, encouraging me, and you guys are so sweet. I love you with all my heart. Thank you for everything that you do and all the support that you give me. But other than that, that is the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave, and of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!